Hey guys, here again with another Sure Grub knife video. In front of us today is the 111 Gen 5. Now this knife has received an incredible array of aesthetic changes, which we'll talk about in today's video. First, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the naming convention here, Gen 5. Of course, that implies that there have been 4 other generations of the 111. Unfortunately, us as kind of consumers haven't really known what the other generations of the 111 is. I'm sure, you know, let's take a look at the F3, for example. We have the F3, then the F3R came out, which stood for revised, and then the F3NS, which stood for new style. Now, all those 3 knives, there are definitely generational improvements and aesthetic changes you can kind of see, or internal improvements that you can see in all 3 of those knives for the F3. But the 111 has been called just the 111 for a long time, since the inception of the model itself. So it's really cool to see that they're moving towards kind of a generational naming system that really kind of streamlines things as well, because you know, if we have NS for new style, really what comes after that? So moving towards a number-based generation naming system, I think, is a smart move to kind of streamline it, and I do expect that all other new updates to knives in the future will also be under a generational naming system. But anyways, back to this knife. The 111, again, has remained, for the most part, unchanged in terms of very major, design aspects of the knife for a long time. Now, in the early days, it seems that there have been multiple changes to the back spacer, contouring on the back spacer portion right here, which is still kind of prevalent even on the Gen 5 model. Some designs to the lanyard hole as well. And also the clip that we see here have changed, but those all have happened fairly early on, it seems, in the first couple of years of the 111's development, and has pretty much stabilized and stayed pretty much the same for many years now. We've also had different blade profiles, full flat grinds, blade flats, the ones with the fuller, non-skeletonized fuller that we see on the premium 111s. But again, those have been pretty established since the time the 111 has came out. So with this Gen 5, you're seeing really significant design aesthetic advancements compared to the 111 from just a few months ago. But first, let's talk about the specs of the knife. The 111, as you guys know, is named so for that 111 millimeter blade, and that really translates to about 4.5 inches of usable cutting length and a handle length that is, or open overall length that is just under 10 inches. We're also looking at a handle length that is around just over 5.5 inches as well. And there's really not too much meaning in this, but really to put this knife into perspective, we have a 95 here, and let's line them up at the tail end here to really get the most extreme visual effect here. And a neon here, and you can really see just how large the 111 is by anybody's standards. This is quite a large knife here. But what does this mean for the weight of the knife? Now, the 111, as you know, for anybody who has held one, these are quite light for the size. And when you pick one up, the first thing that you really notice is just how light it is, given how big of a knife it is in your hand. And we're looking at 4.85 ounces. So honestly, totally reasonable given the size of the knife. Contrast that to the previous 111s, which were around 5.2 ounces, I believe, and there actually are a couple reasons for that. First being, we do have some less blade material here with that skeletonization on in the near the blade spine, and also that milling on the flipper tab. But I think more importantly, and I usually do reserve this talk for the blade portion of the knife notes video, but the standard blade stock on these new Gen 5 111s is actually 3.5 millimeters as opposed to the standard 4 millimeters in most other Sure Grub production knives. I think this is a really great choice. There have been some production 111s in the past that were made in the 3.5 millimeter blade stock, but those definitely were kind of the exception, and They weren't really part of any limited run, they just kind of happened. And now with the Gen 5s, that has been completely standardized to 3.5 millimeters, which again is really awesome. And I think that besides people preferring the thinner blade stock, any weight that you can shave off this knife really makes it more pocketable. So again, really smart move, and makes this knife a lot lighter than you think it is, given its size. But talking more about the blade here, let's see if I can wipe this off. Now, moving on to the blade here, you can see that we have this blade steel here is M390. Again, really nothing too surprising given that Shirogorov has shied away from other blade steels in its premium lineup. Speaking of premium lineups though, it seems that the Gen 5 111 is really going to be offered in the premium setup here with that carbon fiber and M390 blade steel. You're not going to see a version with say G10 handles and LMAX or S30V or more basic blade steel. However, we still might see the older generation 111s being offered in that basic material and setup and aesthetics, however. But anyways, going back to the blade here, you can see that we have the most distinct change is that cutout here. Now this cutout is finger flickable with your thumb and your middle finger doing a spidey flick. I, being a lefty, have to work against the lock when spidey flicking it, which is my preferred method of deployment. But it is doable, and for a right-handed person, I think it'll be much easier as well. This cutout isn't the first time we've seen this cutout, however. The cutout on the customs, of course, is definitely a thing, and that's where it really originated from. This specific design cutout, however, with this little ridge here in the middle, which seems to be done for aesthetics, has also been seen on the 111 Deep Space as of recent, and also the 111 Titanium, which was the first metal-handled 111. So really cool cutout here, and as you can see, it really continues on that previous generation Fuller cutout as well. You can see this is 3D milled here, where it transitions into the cutout. So really cool touch there. The flipper tab also has some milling on it as well. It's not skeletonized, unlike on the 111 Deep Space or the 111 Titanium, but it is kind of cool and it matches along with the cutout. So really nice touches there as well. The blade profile has also changed slightly, not on the belly of the blade, however, but on the top as well. The drop happens much later, so it really draws the blade out a little bit in my opinion. And aesthetically, I think this is a very nice and welcome change compared to the previous generation of 111 blades. With the previous generation, the drop pretty much started right here and continued in a straight line. Right here, you have this it's more curved and comes to a point right here where it goes from one angle to another angle and drops more steeply. Combine this with the swedge here on top, and that's really the cherry on top, as many people say. And this swedge is also borrowed from some of the customs as well. So it's really nice to see that continue down so fast into the production knives. I know the 111 Deep Space also has a similar blade profile, but that being custom vision and now appearing so suddenly in the production line of the 111, really awesome to see, and really love to see those features from the customs being brought down so quick. The jimping has also changed as well. I actually don't believe the 111 has jimping. Correct me if I'm wrong, but right here on the the 111 Gen 5, it is pretty much the same as having no jimping. This honestly is a pretty negative thing in my book. Having jimping this wide here really doesn't contribute to any tactile feel or any grip when using the knife and trying to attempt to use this as jimping. Unfortunately, I really think this is a point where Shirogorov could have really improved in the ergonomics of the 111. But again, seeing as though the original 111 didn't really have any jimping in the first place, I can't really point that as a negative compared to the previous generation. The flipper tab jimping, however, has changed for the better. As you can see here, there's jimping on two angles of the flipper tab as opposed to just one on the front angle here of the previous generation. And if you take a look actually here, at least how I flip the knife, this perfectly contacts my finger on both angles. So it's really nice touch, and I think it's really indicative of how Sergey is thinking about how you're flipping open the knife. As you can see here, there's also jimping on the blade as well. Completely different type of jimping from the flipper tab and the spine as well. So we have really 3 different kinds of jimping here, kind of not very representative of what Sergey usually likes to do, keeping everything tight and together. But I thought that's interesting. Of really no function here that you can't front flip this knife at all. So I really think this is just for aesthetics. Moving on to the handle here, you can see we have that large pivot screw, of course, with all new production models having this larger screw. We also have this beautiful, I believe they call it chaotic carbon fiber. This has blue epoxy, so we get some very nice blue colors here. This knife is also offered in a purple and a bronze as well. I don't believe there's just a normal black carbon fiber like the F3 has at the moment. So we do just have those 3 color variations, and this is the same carbon fiber that they're also using on the F3 NS as well. I really like this chaotic carbon fiber. I think it kind of draws a middle ground between weave carbon fiber that we've seen on the previous generation of premium 111s and marble carbon fiber. So it's really nice material, something different, and I personally really like the looks of it. It catches the light in a different way, and just has a lot more character in my opinion than just normal weave carbon fiber. But going on to the actual milling of the handle, the milling of the handle has changed as well. You can see it's still 3D contoured like we expect from a 111, but the bottom and the top cuts here, the angles have changed. On the previous 111, it pretty much spanned a cut from this point here to here on the spine of the handle, and the bottom was much more shallow. But as you can see here on this Gen 5, we have a cut that follows this first angle here on the blade spine with this kind of this kind of milling motif that has been borrowed from the F3 and S. I really do like seeing these similar motifs being borrowed from different knives, and it really ties this knife into this design era for sure, Gurov. You can see the cuts also intersect onto the middle raised portion, which gives the kind of ball end cuts here some depth as well as it cuts into the main portion of the handle. And I personally also really like this nice sweeping cut here on the bottom as well. It makes the contouring feel better in the hand. Actually, I can, when you have the knife open, I can kind of feel that bottom contour a little bit better, and I think it contributes to the ergonomics more than the bottom cut on the previous generation of 111s. A little bit difficult to describe there, but I really do like that. Also, the middle portion here has milling. The previous generation also had milling, but it was more of a diagonal, straight, kind of quote-unquote silk texturing that we've seen on some other Shurgorov knives. This one right here, this texture has actually been used before, but it hasn't been used in a long time. This kind of vertical wavy texture has been used on some of the very old F3s before the revised version, actually. And I personally didn't really like, I honestly don't like the shape of this milling, but with this very busy carbon fiber texture, you can't really see the milling texture all that much. So honestly, I'm totally fine with it here, and it does have very great tactile. It has a very great tactile feel, and it adds some very nice texturing as well. So honestly, I don't mind the texture that much, but personally, I think the diagonal milling is much more visually appealing. So it's interesting to see this texture being brought back after being unused for so many years. Now, moving on to the other side of the handle. Not really too much to talk about other than the clip here being the big major change. This clip design here has been borrowed from some of the older 111 custom divisions, the 111 custom division bronze, or custom division 111 bronze had a similar clip style as here, and it seems like all of the newer 111s has a similar shape here, except the middle portion is skeletonized. So again, it's really nice to see this clip coming from a custom division down to the new production knives. It is blind screwed, which is a change as well from the old version, old production 111 clip. So it's nice to have these blind screwed clips as well. Similar trend that we're seeing with the new 111, or sorry, new F95 NLs. One functional change as well, though, that we see here is that there is no more recess in the handle material to kind of fit the clip. I honestly don't really know what the reason for that is. I could probably hazard to assume that it's probably to have better retention for the clip when it's clipped onto something, as the material will kind of go underneath the clip into that recess in the handle. However, it makes the clip very hard to use. There's a lot of knives where, or a lot of shear grove knives where people have had problems with clips that are done that way, with that recess in the handle material. The old style F3 with the 2-screw clip is one that comes to mind, and also the Sienkiewicz designed Cannabis. That might actually be Dimitri's fault and not Sergey's, but having recessed material for the clip really just makes the clip sit lower and make it harder to clip onto stuff. So it's really nice to see that change with the Gen 5 111 and just have no recessed material underneath the clip. So this clip works very well, has good retention, and doesn't have the problems that the previous generation of 111 had, in my opinion, in my experience as well. Additionally, here we can also take a look at the back spacer, which has this kind of gear pattern jimping match up with the blade spine here. It's nice to have them on the same plane here, have them be the same, even though they're not matching on the flipper tab or this jimping in the front here. But again, this is something that has changed as well. You can also notice that the actual hole design for the lanyard hole has changed on the back spacer as well. On the previous generation of 111s, it actually just used to be a round hole. So we have a much more complex and aesthetically pleasing shape for that lanyard hole now that matches with the contours of the back spacer. The back spacer, of course, is anodized blue alongside with the clip to match with that blue carbon fiber. I think that's a really nice touch. And of course, on the other models, the bronze and the purple, the clip and the back spacer are anodized accordingly to match with those as well. We also have this very interesting kind of protrusion of material here. I think this is kind of to match the contours of the new lanyard hole, but it's something that really wasn't there. It's very completely minor. But it's something that I did notice, and I believe the 111 Deep Space has it as well. But again, just part of those changes with the lanyard hole design that makes the back spacer just look that much more refined and complex. Of course, just like the previous generation of 111s, we also have that jimping here on the butt end of the back spacer. Unlike the jimping on the front here, it does match in terms of the width. But unlike the front here, this does have some purpose in my opinion. And in my experience, when I am holding the knife and getting ready to flip it, even though my hands are small, I'm assuming it would be much more effective for somebody with larger hands. This jimping really kind of helps secure the knife while you're flipping it and applying pressure to the flipper tab to open it. So nice, interesting touch, and I'm really not sure if that's the reason for it, but in my experience, that's what it works for. That's how it works for me, at least. And that's pretty much it. There are, for the external changes at least, for the internal changes, there definitely are some visual changes here. We have that 2-step milling that we see on the custom division knives. I do remember seeing this starting as early as the 111 titanium at least. And this is something that has changed over the years with the 111 as well. That's kind of an internal change. With the first generation, or I can't really call it first because I really don't know where first kind of starts and ends, but the 111 liners used to be, they are steel, as they act as the stop pin and the inset liner lock for the 111 design, but they used to be just completely non-skeletonized. Then I believe there has been just single level skeletonization. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but the latest custom divisions have had this 2-step milling as well. The customs as well have this 2-step milling. You can see one step is to clear out some material, and then the second step is to actually skeletonize some smaller windows in there. Really cool design if you're able to take this knife apart. Here you can see the blind screw for the clip as well. But something that has changed over the years with the 111 that, again, has really been unannounced, since the 111 has pretty much been just the 111. The bearing system also has changed subtly as well. It's still MRBS like the previous generations. However, on the previous generation of 111s, the bearing sizes have been mismatched. One side would have a normal, I guess what you consider normal MRBS shape that is compatible with the bearing race in the F95 and F3 and Hati, but the other side would be a much larger bearing race now, or bearing cage, I guess. Now, this bearing cage still has 3 rows, but the angle is not as sharply curved, so the overall outer diameter is much larger. This is the same bearing cage, MRBS bearing cage that is used in the Hati Club, actually, and some earlier Shurogrov knives with this unique MRBS bearing cage as well. But that's how the 111 has been for quite a while, at least as long as it has had MRBS, having one side be the same bearing cage size as the F95 and the other one being this larger semi-unique size. However, on the Gen 5, it seems like they've standardized those bearing cages, which also means that if you want to transition to, say, an aftermarket set of rollers, you can pretty much use just the same bearings, roller bearing set as what is used in the F95, which seems to be the standard size for MRBS production knives. Of course, discounting the 2-row MRBS used in the Neon knives. Funny enough, the custom division knives, which have single row roller bearings, has been using similar size bearing cages on both sides for a while. So again, I guess you could say this is another feature that has come down from custom division. But otherwise, overall, again, really awesome changes. Again, I do have some gripes about the lack of, I wouldn't really even call this jimping up here on the top of the blade spine. And also, it would have been nice to see some internal milling into the carbon fiber as well. Carbon fiber, you know, when you mill into it, it doesn't have as significant of a weight reduction, I guess, as compared to metal, but it would be a nice thing to have to give it kind of an internal upgrade to the knife as well. The change in bearings, in my opinion, doesn't really contribute to any internal upgrades. So again, all the changes really here that are significant are pretty much all external. But this knife is really cool, and I know a lot of 111 fans who were really excited to have these changes happen and have been waiting for a long time. And now that the changes are, now this new Generation 5 is finally here, I'm sure that they'll be very impressed and also satisfied with this model as well. But that's pretty much it for this knife notes video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.